Making a podcast just got a lot easier. Meet Anchor, the easiest way for anyone to make a high-quality podcast and distribute it everywhere audio is heard. No studio or fancy equipment needed. With Anchor, all you need to do to start podcasting is hold your phone up to your ear to record, either by yourself or with friends. You can also add music, background tracks, and voice messages from your listeners all right from your phone. Then publish it everywhere, including Apple Podcasts and Google Play Music with just one tap. That's it. You're all set up. It's really that easy. You can use Anchor on the go or from your desktop, and either way you get unlimited podcast hosting. All this combined means it just got ridiculously easy to make your own podcast, whether you're a beginner or a pro. And the best part is that Anchor's 100% free. Get the app now for iOS or Android, or visit anchor.fm to get started. We can't wait to hear your podcast.
Welcome to this special edition episode of the Undisputed Politics Podcast. For people who don't know about this podcast, it's pretty much where I give my raw, unfiltered views on all things political, social justice, all of it. Just any topic I choose to talk about, honestly. Last night I released an episode about Tyre Nichols, who is the young man who was killed by Memphis Police Department on January 7th, and I'm going to just start off by giving a spiel on that, giving my condolences to his family and all of those things. My condolences and my prayers to the family. So just a spiel on it. Tyre Nichols is a 29-year-old black man. He was beaten and killed by 5 officers of the Memphis Police Department on January 7, 2023. He was pulled over for allegedly reckless driving. And according to the Memphis Police Department, a confrontation occurred. Tyre was able to get away from the officers. They were able to catch up with him, and a second confrontation ended up happening. I have the video footage. I have cut some of them down to where I'm able to share them for the viewers on tonight. And so we will be doing that. We will be sharing the videos, and I want to start off by first thing, it's bad. It's just as bad as I thought it would be. It's bad as I don't understand it. It hurt me. I didn't like it. I just didn't like it. But I would, as someone who does social justice work, and someone who has been in the streets, who's been to numerous protests, who sat next to families as they mourned and have dealt with different things when it relates to police violence, I'm very disturbed. It took a lot for me to watch those videos, but like I said, I did watch them, and it was just upsetting for me. For me personally, it was upsetting, and like I said, it was very emotional, because it could have easily been me. When I lived in Memphis, I was away from my family most of the time. I lived with friends, and at one point I was living with my sister. But after I moved out with my sister, I really didn't have like close contact with my family. And so it could have easily been me in a situation like that. And so that's one of the reasons why I am so passionate about things like this, and the reason why things like this upset me the way that they do, because things just It could have been me, and that's just how all I can say on it. It could have been me. I hate that. I truly hate that this happens, and it happens so frequently now. It happens to the point where it's so frequent. Like after George Floyd and people got so into social justice, and you had all of these different organizations and different things like that saying that they would give money and all of these things, not a lot has changed. And so I get the frustration that people have. I get that how mad people are about things just not pretty much not changing. And so I'm just not going to even prolong the time anymore. I'm going to go ahead and share these videos. And like I said, they are very upsetting. And so if you would like to leave the live or whatever it is you need to do, please do so. Because it is graphic. It's terrible, but I'm gonna play it and let you guys see. The first video is going to be of when they first encountered him, and pretty much pulled down on him or whatever, if that's how you want to call it. So we're gonna start with the first video. Putting it up. Give me 1 second.
Get the fuck out of here! Get the fuck out the fucking cup! Damn, I didn't do anything! Hey, hey, I didn't turn your ass around! Alright. On the ground. Alright. You don't do that, okay? Get on the fucking ground! Get on the ground! Okay. I think we tase your ass! Alright, I'm on the ground. Lay down! That's all. Lay down! Please tase on the ground! I think we tase you! Get on the ground! Lay down! One! Now! Alright, okay. Alright. Break your shit. Okay, dude, damn! Turn the fuck around. Put your fucking hands on your back! Bitch, put your hands behind your back while I break. Okay, stop. I'm gonna knock your ass the fuck out. Okay, you guys are really doing a lot right now. Bro, lay down. I'm just trying to go home. Lay down. Man, if you don't lay down. Oh, I am on the ground. Put your hands on your stomach. I got you. Okay. Okay. Get the fuck back. Stop. I'm not doing it. Please. Oh, shit.
So that was the first video, and as you can see, the officers just got out of their cars and went straight up to him, and they bum rushed the car, grabbed him out of the car, didn't really give him an opportunity to put his hands behind his back, and just like I said, from the initial reportings that we had out there, he was able to get away and he ran away. So that was the first video, and that kind of goes into the second video. And like I said, I did not edit any of these videos. I only clipped them down to a decent amount to where I could share them and we could analyze and look at the different things that happened within this particular incident. So I'm gonna share the second video again. Warning before I show the second video, if you don't want to see it, please leave the live, come back. The videos are very disturbing, so I'm pulling up the second video now.
Hey,
give me your hand.
You might get sprayed again. Hey, Mike, give me that, bro. Watch out.
Give me a fucking hand. Give me a hand.
All right. Okay. All right. Huh?
Hey, Mike, give me your hands, bro. Give me your hands.
Watch out. Spray your ass again.
Hey, give me your hands, bro.
Watch out.
Spray.
All right.
Give me your hands, bro.
Oh, shit.
Give me your hands.
Oh, shit.
Give me your hands, bro.
So, I mean, I don't really even have words for that second video. I mean, you can look at it for yourself and just see how ruthless they did him. Now, from what I'm understanding from the video footages that I did look at, that video is pretty much one of the officers' body cam, and it is when they pretty much found him on the second altercation. Pretty much they chased him down and they spotted him running or whatever. He was apparently running to his mother's house because, as you can hear from the beginning of that video, you hear him screaming "Mom." And apparently where they caught up with him on the second altercation, which is what I just showed, it was about 3 to 4 houses away from where his mother lives. So I'm gonna go ahead and play the third video that I pulled from all of the footage. Again, all of this footage is like from what the Memphis Police Department and the City of Memphis released. It was like over an hour worth of footage. And so the reason why I'm just now reviewing this at 7:35 or 7:30 or whatever is because I pretty much had to look through all the videos and I pretty much wanted to view them before I decided to go live. So before I share this third video, again, the video is very graphic. If you would like to leave the live, please go ahead and do so before I begin playing the third video.
What's it? Give me your fucking hand. Give me your hand. Give me your fucking hand. Give me your hand, motherfucker. Give me your hand. What's it? Give me your fucking hand. Give me your hand. Give me your fucking hand. Give me your hand, motherfucker. Give me your hand.
So in that particular video, as you can see, just like Ben Crump told us, you know, the family had a press conference after they saw the video, and the mother only saw a few seconds or about a minute, I think they said, of the footage, and pretty much his stepfather and Ben Crump and some of the others who saw that video said that they beat him like a human pinata. And as you can see from that video, he is clearly restrained, and I don't know if they had handcuffs on him, but his hands were clearly behind his back, and so he was no threat to them. His hand was behind his back. It's 5-6 officers there on the scene at that particular moment, and you still see them punching this man in his face, telling them to give him his hands. But his hands was already behind his back. They literally had him restrained, regardless if they had him in cuffs or what, but they still had him restrained, as you can see. Now, that's the third video I have. Now, I pulled up a fourth video, and this fourth video is a little bit longer, and I'm going to play the longest video, which will be the Skycam video, and that one is going to be the most damning video. I think it's about 4 minutes, but this next video, this one is going to be more so audio, and so you'll have to listen in to hear him screaming and listen to some of the things that are being said in the background of this video, because it is the officer's body camera, and the body camera pretty much fell off as they were engaged in the scuffle. So again, just like all the other 3 videos, I'm about to get ready to share the video. If you would like to leave live before I start sharing the video, please do so at this time. As I am getting ready to share the 4th video.
Give me your fucking hand, bitch. Give me your fucking hand. Give me your hand. Give me your hand. Give me your hand. Give me your hand. Hey. Hey, Mike. Watch out. Watch out. Give me your hand. Mom. Give me your hand. Give me your fucking hand. Give me your hand. Give me your hand. Hey, Mike, give me your hand, bro. Give me your hand. Watch out. Hey, give me your hand, bro. Right. Give me your hand, bro. Give me your hand. No! Give me your fucking hand, bro. Come on out there. All right, get some on here. All right, back reach. Hey. Give me your fucking hand. Give me your hand. Give me your fucking hand. Give me your hand. Get your hand. Give me a hand. Turn around. Lay flat. Lay flat, goddamn. All right. Lay flat, goddamn. Lay flat. Lay flat. Lay flat. Lay flat, goddamn. All right. Give me a fucking fight. Hey, what's this? Give me a motherfucking hand. Watch out. I'm gonna turn the fuck out. Get his fucking hand. Watch out, motherfucker. Watch out. Give me the hand. Give me the hand. Give me the hand. Same location. What's the council case? What's the council case?
So, like I said, that video was more so audio more than anything, but you hear him in the background screaming for his mother. You clearly hear there, like I said, there's a scuffle or whatever's going on. I've showed you the other 2 videos where you clearly see that there was a fight or a scuffle or a beating that was occurring. So, when that officer's body camera fell off, you can pretty much make the assumption that at that moment they were engaged in the altercation or the scuffle or whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna stop calling it a scuffle. I'm gonna call it what it is. It was a beating. It was a brutal attack, an assault on this man. So let me rephrase the way I'm presenting this, because it definitely wasn't some kind of meaningless scuffle. It was definitely a beating that was unwarranted, because like I said in the previous video, they literally had his hands behind his back. Whether or not he was in cuffs or what, his hands were behind his back. He was defenseless at that point. And so the fact that they were continuing to hit him after he was pretty much in their custody at that point, you got his hands behind his back. So why are you continuing to beat this man after his hands are behind his back. At that point, if you're going to arrest him, go ahead and get your cuffs, put your cuffs on him, and let that be it. So, like I said, that was that. Now, this fifth video, the fifth video is the last video that I'm going to share, and it is the most damning video of all of them, because this video shows you pretty much from the higher up angle, because it is from like a skycop. A lot of people don't like those sky cops and different things like that, but I personally like them for things exactly like this. When you have situations like this, you are able to find the footage. You are able to have the footage of officers doing wrongdoing. In the city of Greenwood, where I'm from, we have city cameras up around the city, and they are helpful in solving a lot of the murders and different things like that that have happened. And so in this particular case, the sky cop was instrumental, because the sky cop pretty much caught all of this, the entire thing on video. It caught the entire second altercation on video, the second beating when they caught up to him the second time on video. So this one I'm going to share. It doesn't have any audio with it, so you'll have to. We're watching it with no audio, and again, I did crop it down to a length that we would be able to watch it and not have to sit through an entire thing of just watching different things unfold. I made sure I cropped it down to the parts that were essential to us to review on this particular episode tonight. Again, it's a graphic warning, so if you want to leave, please leave and come back in about 4 minutes, and we'll be discussing this particular video and just giving more thoughts on this particular case. So I'm pulling up the final and most damning video. So, like I said, I told y'all that last video was gonna be damning, and it was. The reason why I named the title for this particular episode, Tyre Nichols, Death for Black People, the policy of the Memphis Police Department, is because this isn't the first time. This is not the first time Memphis police has engaged in this type of activity. Now, the Memphis Police Department, for most people that don't know, they have had several things that have happened over the last couple of years. The most recent thing was they hired a new police chief, CJ Davis, and she came from Atlanta. And before that, you had a lot of protests going on in relation to the shooting of Martavius Banks, where the police officers pretty much chased him down and shot him in the back. And if people remember, back in 2016, 2017, Darius Stewart was murdered by the police, and there was large-scale protest in Memphis that was during the height of when the Black Lives Matter movement had started and different things like that. And so you had a lot of protests in Memphis and around the country, and Memphis ended up shutting down a major bridge. And from what I'm looking at online right now, there are reports that they have shut down a bridge again tonight, the I-55 bridge, and they have shut down the Memphis bridge, the I-55 bridge, tonight, in protest. And for people who don't understand, I'm gonna try to share this so you guys can see how they've shut down the bridge. See if I can share that for you guys. So as you can see, they've shut down the bridge. And this is not the first time they've done that. The first time they shut down major bridge was back in, like I said, I may have my years wrong, but it was around 2016, 2017. And that was because of the murder of Darius Stewart, and the city of Memphis is still paying the pension for that police officer. He was never, justice was never really served because he never went to jail. Never went to jail. And so, the reason I wanted to talk about this on my podcast tonight and do a special live edition of this is because I wanted to kind of make sure I put this out there and share my thoughts with people and just give raw reaction to it and hear from the people in the comment section and hear from different people and different things like that. And for me, this situation is especially damning. You're talking about this man was literally dragged out of his car. And as you can see from that 5th video that I showed you guys, when he was down on the ground, they literally had all the opportunity in the world to put him in handcuffs and do what they needed to do. But you see that they did not do that. They dragged this man on the ground after they had already beaten him. And one thing I didn't show you guys, and you'll probably see it on other social media videos and different things like that. I didn't crop that video to show you guys. But you'll see on that particular video how the EMTs, when they got there, they basically acted like the man was dead. And he was fully alive. The EMTs literally took their time doing whatever they need to do. They all stood around looking and joking and pity-patting with each other like this man was not in distress. And so you now seeing that video, now you understand why the 2 EMTs that were involved in this incident, why they were fired from the Memphis Fire Department, because you can see from the video that they were complicit in this as well. And I also didn't show you a part of the video where when they pepper sprayed him, one of the officers got pepper sprayed in the face. And once he, put a little water, whatever, in his eyes and got back together, he went and he punched the other officer that sprayed the pepper spray. They were so out of order and so rogue that they were literally out there fighting each other while they was fighting Tyre. They was beating him and then fighting each other. That's just how rogue and out of order these cops were. You have Jean. Jean said, I watched the video already and just wanted to comment on the tragedy of watching a man getting murdered for no reason. These men are very evil and should pay for their crimes to the fullest extent of the law. Hope people who protest this crime will be respectful of his family and mother and father. It's one of the most horrible things I have ever seen, and there is no words to express what I feel. I hope they will see that some policemen are bad and investigate the problem in our society. Thank you for that, Jean. I do want to kind of address a little bit of something in your comment, Jean. And this is no slight against you or anything. And I want to make sure I choose my words carefully here. As an organizer, and some may call me an activist, one of the things that I hate when you have someone pass away at the hands of police. One of the things that I truly hate, I hate when people try to tell Black people how to feel in these instances. Now, I will say, of course, I respect the mother. No mother should have to go through this. Of course, I respect their wishes that people protest peacefully. Me personally, I hope that people protest peacefully. But at a certain point, people are getting tired. At a certain point, people get tired of having to go through the same things over and over and over again. See, when George Floyd happened, this country acted like we were in a racial awakening and, oh my gosh, this is some type of reckoning against this country. Things are going to change. Here we are in 2023, and we still haven't yet to get the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. The Congress is refusing to do anything on voting rights. You have things like qualified immunity that is still being questioned, Why should an officer be just able to just do whatever he wants with no consequences? That's what qualified immunity pretty much is. You have gun violence just going rampant around the country. These are things that when George Floyd happened, this country said that we were going to address, and here we are in 2023, and it has not been addressed. And so, like I said, respectfully to Jean, thank you for giving your comment. But respectfully, like I said, as a person who's into activism and all of these things, and like I said, some people may call me an activist. I don't like to call myself an activist. I'm more so of an organizer, a community leader. But as someone who's been in this work and who's done this work and know people who are on the ground and different things like that, respectfully, I just don't like when people do that, because people are tired. And of course, we don't want people to burn down their cities and all of those different things. But at a certain point, people just get tired. And that's just what people resort to when they are angry, when they are fed up against what is happening to our people. And so, thank you for that comment. But I just wanted to make sure I share my thoughts on that, just that particular issue at hand. Like I told you guys, they are currently protesting right now, and they have shut down the bridge. I'm currently looking at different tweets and different things like that. I'm looking at different tweets of what's going on from different people who are on the ground right now. People who are on the ground and on the scene. Nobody is getting. I'm watching, like I said, I'm looking. Looking at different things. I'm gonna pull up some different videos to show you guys, and we're gonna look at these videos, these live videos, just like I said, to kind of just see what's going on. We're gonna watch a few of these live videos. I'm gonna pull this up, and this is to kind of show you guys what's pretty much being demanded. This is what the community is. So if you can see it, I don't know if you can really see it pretty good. But pretty much this is what the community is demanding. The community is demanding that, one, they release the body cam footage. They have done that tonight. Charged officers, and I'll kind of go through that as well. I'll give you guys a spiel on what they have charged officers with in just a second once I get through going through this. Name all the officers and public personnel that were on the scene. They have yet to do that. We know the names of 5 officers who were involved, but if you saw in the videos, there were several other officers who were also involved, and there were 2 EMTs that were fired, and their names have yet to be released. So that is something that the community is asking to happen. They are also asking for the officers' files. For people who don't know, officers' files are different things like, they pretty much have a personnel file. It's just like at any job. You get in trouble, you get a warning, you get a write-up, they put it in your file. It's there for people to see later on down the line if you are able to get fired or anything like that. And so pretty much they want the files of the officers to be released. We want to know because I'm going to be a part of this community, we want to know, what have these officers done in the past? What's their background? What does it look like? What have they done in the past that may show what they, that may show what may have caused them to be like this. Did the MPD miss anything? Should they have been fired before this? And so the community is also demanding that they pass the data transparency ordinance, the Memphis City Council, in the use of pretextual traffic stops, in the use of unmarked cars and plain clothes officers. And this is something that I have heavily advocated for. If you go back and listen to part 1 of this podcast episode, I talked about this on yesterday's podcast. And for me, I want them to start doing this because, one, there's no reason why an officer should be pulling you over for a speeding ticket. You have a busted tail light or something like that. There's no reason why you ran a red light, anything like that. There's no reason why an officer should be pulling you over in an unmarked car. It's just no reason why officers should be pulling you over in a Honda, an Altima. They pulling you over in a Charger that doesn't have any markings of a police vehicle. All of a sudden, you just riding and then some blue lights flashing behind you off of a car. One, that brings up so many different safety concerns for people, because when you're looking at it, you thinking about the issues that come with this. Just thinking about the fact that people literally every day are going through things where in some places where police officers are literally, people are pretending to be police. And so if you look at that, if you truly look at that and you put it into perspective, when you look at that and you put it into perspective, why would you have police officers out here pulling over people in plain clothes? Why would you have police officers pulling up on people in their regular cars? Like, why would you be doing that? Why would you ever be doing something like that when you know that all of these things are going on? You know that there are instances where people are doing things like this. And so there's no reason why any department should be out here engaging with people like that. It's just no excuse for it. It's just no excuse for it. It's no excuse for it. I'm disgusted by it. I don't like it. And so that's it's one of the major things that I personally want to see happen. I personally want to see that changed. I don't like it. It shouldn't be going on. The community also wants to dissolve the Scorpion, OCU, MGU, and the use of task force. So when you're talking about task force, you're talking about a number of different things, different task force for different issues and different things like that. For many people who follow these different movements and different things like that, Breonna Taylor's incident involved a task force. So pretty much task force are started within the department, and these task force are tasked with going out and trying to just different things like that. Just different things like that. And just understanding that these task force are pretty much officers that are in unmarked cars oftentimes. In Breonna Taylor's incident, they really pulled up on her house at 1 o'clock in the morning. In this particular instance, they did a traffic stop. Now, why would they, if this is a task force and they're supposed to be tasked with doing specific tasks, why are they out doing patrols and pulling people over for traffic stops? And so that's why people are upset. That's the reason why people want these different task force and different things like that disbanded, because they pretty much, you don't need them. You don't really need them. They don't really provide much other than, like I said, they're supposed to be for you. The utilization of them are supposed to be for to solve specific crimes and look at different tasks and different things like that. As far as things like trafficking, you have things like auto theft, different things that they're supposed to be looking at, and a lot of times they aren't really doing that. A lot of the times these officers are out in the street and they are engaging in stuff like what they engaged in with Tyre. They pretty much pulling up on people, carrying on, doing what they want to do, like they did him in this video that I showed you guys. So that's that on that. And I'm currently looking at different things. I'm pulling up different things that are going on right now. I want to share multiple different perspectives of what's happening right now on the ground. Like I said, I follow several different activists and people who are on the ground right now. So I'm trying to give y'all just a perspective and let y'all see what's going on actively on the ground as we speak. So as you can see, they are on the bridge. They have shut down um, that particular bridge, pretty much seeking justice for Tyre Nichols. I'm gonna go back over to Twitter and see what's happening. See so we can get some thoughts and different things on what's happening on Twitter. Um, and I'm gonna share some different things. About what's being said on Twitter. Um, this video is his mom. So I'm gonna pause that because I did invite Miss Anna. She's someone who does community work and has done a lot of different things out in the community and has been boots on the ground before. And so I wanted to kind of get Miss Anna thoughts on this whole situation of Tyre, and um, I'll add her in now. Um, Hi, Miss Anna.
Hello, my love, and hello everybody else.
I'm not sure if you watched the videos or not, but I have shown them on this live at the beginning. I gave everybody a graphic warning, make sure people who didn't want to see them left the live. So, um, but I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on this whole thing and the impact of it, considering that in back when George Floyd happened, you had so many people saying that things like this could never happen again. Things like this would never happen again in this country because they felt like we were in some type of racial awakening, and that things were just gonna change. And as we've seen, like I talked about earlier in this live, um, you still have no Justice and Policing Act that has been passed. That's still on the table. You still have qualified immunity and all of these different things that they said would be gone by now. But they're still in place because there hasn't been any real inaction. And I want to get your thoughts on it.
Well, thank you for inviting me onto your live. And as you know, I'm prior military, and there is protocol when dealing even with a combatant that has just fired on you. There is no reason for the viciousness, for the abuse, for all the things that happen. And what we're talking about here is accountability. But we also have to understand that when you're talking about accountability, who's more who's more who's more going to be held to accountability? Does that make sense to you? Is that there are certain
Yeah,
demographics that are going to
it
be
definitely
held?
makes sense to me. A lot of the conversation that I've seen people having is that a lot of people are shocked that it was 5 black officers that have been arrested. But like I said, I don't know if you have seen the videos, but as you see in these videos, you see other officers. One of them in particularly was a white officer, and so what I've tried to talk about over the last couple of days is about how pretty much that blue wall that has been established, it only is effective for the people who created it. It's only effective for the white people who have created it.
So
When it
not to
comes down to
interject.
black officers, you're going to experience that same racism that everybody else is experiencing.
So
So
not
you
to
can feel like they're going to protect you, but they ain't really trying to protect you as much as they would a white officer. And what I've said is that if this had been majority of those officers had been white, we probably wouldn't have never got this video. It would probably be weeks before we ever got any traction on them actually being put on some type of leave or administrative duty or something like that. And so what are your thoughts on that?
So when we're talking about these things, we got to look at systems and culture. So if you have a system or a culture that is corrupt, it doesn't matter what the people within that system or culture look like. So that's what the first thing that we have to look at. We also have to look at the fact that are the individuals going to be held accountable for the wrongdoing that they do? So when you have responsibility, accountability, and a change in culture or a corrupt culture, it really doesn't matter. But what you have, which doesn't avoid me when I think about certain things, when we're talking about accountability, who are we going to be held accountable, and what stereotypes are we going to forward? If there's a stereotype of you being violent, doesn't matter who you're being violent to or with. And then you have the CYA. So you have a situation where I'm going to hold somebody accountable, but I'm going to pick and choose who I hold accountable. I was very surprised that they were fired and that they were actually given murder charges. I was surprised, but I also understand what the indoctrination is about and what the ideology is and what the signal about that is. If you have a situation where you're saying that these people or this group is not being held accountable for, who am I going to hold accountable for? So now when you turn around and say to me again, well, these people are not held accountable. Oh, we did. These people right here. Now, let's look at a lot of the shootings or a lot of abuse that goes on when we're talking about policing and quote unquote public safety. When Justine Diamond was murdered, what did the cop look like? And what happened after that? When Jeremy Martis was killed, what did the cop look like? And what happened after that? So we have to make sure we understand what the signals are. We have to understand what the dog whistles are. And we should not be surprised when these things happen. And just to let you know, I don't believe in watching videos like that because that is Black trauma and Black pain. And I just watched the attack of Nancy Pelosi's husband versus what happened to Tyre. And they did not want to show that. So what we also have to figure is, why is it okay to show and exhibit Black trauma, Black pain versus the pain of other individuals? It shouldn't be shown, but it's for anybody. Let's be clear about that. Because when Daniel Schaefer was murdered, they continuously put this on loop. So the question is, why? Why are we doing this? So for me, it's desensitizing people to seeing these things. So when you look at these things, you got to remember that there's a reason why these videos are being allowed to be shown.
Yeah, I definitely understand that. Uh-oh. Can you hear me? Oh, you
I
can?
can.
You can. Okay. Okay. So yeah, I definitely understand that. And for me, the one reason why I wanted to watch these videos, and that's also one of the reasons why I put up a warning for the people like you who have that different viewpoint where they just don't want to see these videos. And I made sure I put that up for people. If you didn't want to see them, please, I let them know the time frame of how long the videos would be. That way, if they wanted to come back and join the conversation, they could come back after I had showed those particular videos. But the reason why I showed them is because I feel like there are some people, particularly Black people, who they don't believe these things happen unless they see it themselves. There are some who will say, "Well, we don't know if he actually didn't comply." But as I showed with the first video, they didn't give him an opportunity to comply. Soon as they rolled up to the car, they dragged him out of the car. And so I showed that for people like that. Now, some might say that people are just going to be however they want to be, and they may not, they'll see the video and still think however they think. But I do feel like some people, I may not bring one or whole group of people that feel like that, but I'll change the mindset of some who have that opinion or that viewpoint, and they'll understand that he did not have the opportunity to comply and different things
can
like
I
that.
say this? Can I say this? The thing about it is, in order for you to live in a certain world, you will make certain lies up for yourself. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That in order for you, I'm trying to think of a personification of, say, for instance, you're living in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland. There's a certain illusion that you have to live there. When we're talking about Peter Pan and situations like that, they had to make an illusion on why I'm living here, what's going on here. We can go to Roman goddesses and Greek goddesses. I cannot explain the world, so what I'm going to do is make a deity that's just like me to explain away the things that I can't explain. Okay? The second thing about it is, if the only narrative that you're getting is that this particular person did this thing and this was the result of that thing, if that's the only thing that you're seeing and there's not an objective eye to it, your world and your bubble is going to be corrupted with that. And you're going to have to live in an environment to where, okay, this is the state of being. How do I make sense of this? What did he do? But then you have to understand a certain situation too, is that it's just like the Matrix. I'm sorry. Just like the Matrix. Those people within the Matrix were in a world that was curated for them, right? And there were certain things that were put in the Matrix to ensure that you stayed comfortable in the matrix. And if you were taken out the matrix, you either one or two things: accepted what was going on or fought against it completely. Or you can have a situation where you know what's going on and you decide, you know what, I would rather not know. Does that make sense? Because that book was written by a Black woman, and the Terminator and the Matrix movies came out of this book by this Black woman, right? So if you have a situation with a people, I have to make sense of this world. Nobody will act that vicious without being prompted. It's even if you know that that's not the truth. So you have to understand that you're going to have these three sets of people. And it also goes into, I don't know if you know this, but it's called the allegory of the cave. And in the allegory of the cave, these people are brought up in this cave. And all they see is the shadows of the world outside. And when somebody gets out the cave and says, hey, that's not really what a horse looks like, that's not really what a woman looks like, the question you have to ask is, are the people still in the cave going to believe you and then try to make you come back and recapture you? Or do you just leave those people behind? So there's a whole dichotomy to these certain things. Certain people, even if you showed that this person did nothing wrong, absolutely did nothing wrong, they're going to find a reason why that person either caused their own. They did what Martin Luther King. A lot of people decided that Martin Luther King caused his own death. A lot of people don't want to talk about that. That there were there was a poll done during that time. 30% of Black people said he caused his own death. How do you combat that? So once we get to a certain point, we have to go in with understanding that there are going to be people that, quote unquote, cannot be taken out the matrix. And it's more dangerous for you to try to take them out. That's what I have to say about that. You have to acknowledge that these people are not going to be able to be taken out, whether out of comfort or if they're a true enemy. One particular, Candace Owens. Candace Owens was racially harassed, racially profiled while she was in high school. She actually enlisted the NAACP to help her. She won several thousands of dollars for that situation. Now she says racism doesn't exist and she wants to grow up during the time of her grandfather. How do you fix that? You don't. You can't. And some people, just like Marcus Garvey said, some people I don't endeavor to take back to Africa because they're not any good here and they're not going to be any good in Africa. So that's the way I feel about that. So focusing on the fact that these are Black cops, you have to focus on, like I said, again, you have to look at the movie The Matrix. And when you look at the movie The Matrix, you will see there were certain people that the agents took over. So what do you do with them? There's nothing for you to do with them. That's how I feel about that.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely understand their perspective. We're seeing I just showed before you joined some of the live streams that are going on right now in Memphis. They protesters and different activists and people that I know who are on the ground are going live because they are currently shutting down the I-55 bridge, if I'm not mistaken, the I-55 bridge from Memphis to Arkansas. And I was watching a news stream before I started this live as I was watching the videos on my own. And the commentary about that, the fact that they were pretty much in the process of going to shut down the bridge, it kind of irritated me a little bit. And then I also, at some point, I had comments going in this live, and one of the commentators talked about pretty much wanted to be peaceful protests and different things like that. But the reason why I got frustrated with that is because it's so easy to tell Black people when we're going through trauma how we should react. When those people were storming the Capitol, I didn't hear nobody out here saying that they shouldn't be angry. They shouldn't be mad. They should just stop that because that's not right. I mean, I heard it afterwards, after we heard about all the crazy things that they did, like taking dumps on the walls and storming into Nancy Pelosi's office and sitting at her desk and all of that type of stuff. We heard people afterwards saying, yeah, they shouldn't have did that and all that stuff. But while it was going on, we literally had a lot of people that were acting like they never thought this could happen. Oh my gosh, why are they doing this? And so for me, it just irritates me when things like this happen. Black people and our responses to it are policed even more than we're already policed. It's like they're police. Now you want to police my response. Now you're upset because this has happened, and now I personally don't condone people going to burn down the cities and different things like that. But one thing I've said, even back when the George Floyd situation was going on, is that I'm not mad at these people for that. I feel like that's their way of expressing their anger. It's not right to me, but I can understand somebody getting so angry to the point where they're just like, the only way I can get a reaction is by burning this whole thing down. And so it irritates me when we have these situations, and then you have people who will say, well, why are they holding up the bridge? There are people who may need to get to an emergency or different things like that. Well, where was this same sentiment for Tyre when these officers were beating him down? Like, where was all of that when Tyre was being beaten down? I showed one of the videos, and the EMTs need to be held accountable too, because when they got there, they took their time trying to get him help. And so, what are your thoughts on the policing of our responses when things like this happen?
One thing people need to understand is that when you have an oppressed people, you have to police their lives. The lives have to be curated, even in their anger. Because this is the thing, if you allow that to happen, how do you know they're not going to turn on you? So what I tell people is that, why are you surprised? Why do we have this toxic amnesia? That, let's be clear about Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King chose that type of nonviolent resistance because he knew what was going to happen. Because the indoctrination has already been there, that Black people are inherited to be criminality. We are inherently violent. So if these media pick these things up, even if it's righteous indignation, it doesn't matter. Does that make sense to you? That the reason why you see these videos of these Karens and Chads, that it seems like these people that are the victims are overly calm and overly respectful and overly patient, is because we have to be like that. Because we have to beat the narrative that we are violent, when we know statistically that is not the truth. That being violent in any case comes into proximity crimes, not into a generalized crime. The second part about it is you're salting the meat. I'm putting things out there. Oh, they're going to be peaceful. Oh, they're going to be, because at the end of the day, even if there's an element that is put in there to agitate, it's not going to be blamed on those particular people. We learned that during the George Floyd, that 99, I wouldn't say 99, 95% of the George Floyd protests were peaceful. The other percentage was because there were people that were put there on purpose to agitate the protesters, do certain things. And there was also uniformed officers that did things to agitate the protesters. But they weren't blamed for that. You had a person, a Caucasian person, that literally shot up a police station. But Black Lives, he was a part of the Proud Boys and a white supremacy group, and he did it on purpose because he knew that we were going to get blamed for that. So when we're thinking about things, we have to understand that that's the point. That's not the bug, that's the feature. That no matter what happens, it's never a good time for you to protest against your oppressor. So we need to get out of it. I was watching Nosy Bystanders, and they were talking about how the protesters, it was put out, the protesters asked the police for permission. The First Amendment of the Constitution says that you can assemble, you can protest, but that goes into the fact that our minorities full citizens, and do minorities understand their rights? And is the same treatment going to be had when you attack the Capitol because you didn't get your way and this didn't go the way you wanted, versus that you're brutalizing me? And it's simply not. And that's what I have to say about that. That we have to understand, in a book by Huey P. Newton that says, unless I'm sorry, let me backtrack. A revolutionary is a doomed man, in the sense that if you decide to go against the powers that be, you need to understand what your place is and what is going to happen to you if you do these things to the status quo. And a lot of people are not ready to give certain things up because they're comfortable. They have their iPhones, they have their sneakers, they're quote unquote influencers. But this is the thing that Martin Luther King, James Baldwin, Barnard Rustin, Malcolm X wanted to show during segregation, that no matter what you did, you could be brutalized. If you look at Martin Luther King, he was peaceful, nonviolent, didn't want any violence. Actually, Malcolm X actually said the same thing. He just, and the Black Panthers and the Deacons of Defense was, I'm defending myself. Where's Martin Luther King? Where's Medgar Evers? Where's Malcolm X? They're in the same places. And they did 3 different things. So at the end of it, Elijah McCain played the violin for stray cats and cats in shelters. He was still brutalized. So it's not about how gentle or how you go to self-defense. It's about what I need to do to make you not stand up. And that's what people need to realize, and stop having amnesia about certain things.
Yeah, this whole situation is a lot, and I feel like I said at the beginning, a lot of people felt like George Floyd was going to be the end of a lot of this stuff that's going on right now with this country, and For me, it's just.
Can I ask you
it
why?
is-
Why?
and
Why?
that's what I was about to say. Like, I don't
Why?
understand how they feel like George Floyd was his situation, and not to downplay anything with regarding his murder, but one murder is in the arresting of those cops was not going to be what is going to change 400 plus years of things that this country have done to Black people.
Can I tell you why George Floyd was so pivotal?
Mm-hmm.
Can I tell you why?
Mm-hmm.
The fact of the matter is just, you got to look at the murders that they spotlight. They spotlighted Emmett Till. Why did they spotlight Emmett Till? Because of the viciousness and his age. Why was George Floyd spotlighted? Because we literally watched him die on camera. It took too long. See, the difference between him and this other murder was that initially we didn't watch him die on camera. George Floyd took too long. Because who was killed before George Floyd? And who was killed after George Floyd? After George Floyd, there was nearly no, I'm not going to say 1,000 people because that's over the years. But there was at least 100 people that were killed after George Floyd. There were people that were brutalized after George Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like, it's not about George Floyd. George Floyd was not a martyr. A martyr is somebody that gives their life and makes that conscious decision that I'm going to give my life for this. George Floyd was a catalyst. And the only reason why he was a catalyst is because it took too long for him to die and it was on camera.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that. How many murders have we had since George Floyd? So we can play this toxic amnesia that George Floyd changed everything. George Floyd, that murder didn't change anything. What happened was people, just like during the Martin Luther King civil rights, people were able to see in media what was actually going on. I'm gonna tell you the case about the 3 civil rights workers that was killed, Swarner and Goodman and Cheney. Well, people don't tell you that there was 2 other bodies that were found after they found, I'm sorry, not after, but while they were found looking for these 3 civil rights workers. If anybody has seen the movie Mississippi Burning, that's what that movie was about the freedom riders. There was 2 other bodies that were found. People forget about that. Let's talk about the March on Selma. Let's be clear. When that march happened, that was the 3rd march. John Lewis, his skull was fractured on the first one. The second one, Martin Luther King came down and they agreed not to go past the bridge. The other time, there was a white pastor that was killed. They ran him over, literally. And once that white pastor, his name was Pastor Reeves, Reebs, he was murdered. And that's when the judge put in an injunction. And that is when the March on Selma happened. So we have to understand that these things that happen, there's more people being murdered before and after. And let's not play games about what's going on.
Definitely. And I shared a comment from one of the people in the comments who said easily over 100, and I can't dispute that because there's definitely probably been 100 people who have been brutalized by police since George Floyd. Um, in Memphis, in particular, you had several incidents after George Floyd and the protest in 2020, where people were brutalized by police, and that's the reason why the particular name for this episode is the death of Black people, the policy of the Memphis Police Department. Because when it initially happened, you had the police chief come out and say, this is not our policy. This is not what we do. But you have several instances of this happening beforehand. So it's like, how can you say that's not the policy when this is continuing to happen time and time again? And so clearly it's the policy. It may not be the policy on paper, but it's definitely the policy that you're going to go out and you're going to harass Black people. You're going to arrest Black people for false things. In this particular case, they're claiming that he was reckless driving, but there's no record of reckless driving. There's no video footage of him recklessly driving. They're able to show us body cam footage. So obviously within that body cam footage, if he was recklessly driving, there would be something on the body cam footage before they approached him that would show that, oh, we pulled him over because he was recklessly driving. And so since there is nothing like that, it's clear that that was also something that was made up. And that kind of leads me into what I'm about to talk about now is like the media coverage of things. When this first came out, you had a lot of media networks and different things like that calling what happened to him a confrontation and saying that, oh, well, he was allegedly being pulled over for reckless driving, and there was one initial altercation and a confrontation, and then there was a second altercation and all of these things. And I personally, as someone who's into communications, I do my regular podcast. I've worked for different political campaigns and different things like that. I'm a big person on messaging. And when you look at the difference between the way Black media has framed this and the way Black media has pretty much from the get-go did not give credence to any of those alleged, oh, well, he was recklessly driving, because there was no evidence of that. And so for these media outlets, me personally, I feel like a lot of them deserve to retract a lot of the articles and different things that they put out, but we know that's not going to happen. But for a lot of these media networks and a lot of these newspapers and a lot of these television shows and different things like that, the messaging was clear from the get-go that they were going to side with the police regardless, until they realized that, oh, it's some video footage out here. And this video footage is going to be damning. So now we got to reframe the way we're talking about this. And so what are your thoughts on the media and how the media plays a role in all of the situations that are happening when it relates to these police shootings and police violence that is happening?
Okay, so I went to, because I don't want to bloviate certain things. You know what I'm saying? I went to a Newsweek article. And as of 2021, there was 229 Black people killed by the police since George Floyd's murder. Okay? So the issue, that's in 2021. So George Floyd was killed in 2020. There have been at least 229 Black people that was killed since that. Okay? The vast majority, they were male in the range from 3 months, a 3-month-old, to 88. And we know of one of them, LaMelo Parker, a 4-month-old baby that was killed in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
So to go back to messaging, like you said, the fact of the matter is they kept saying, oh, is it going to be peaceful? They're not doing anything. They're not covering their faces. I watched, it was a black female reporter, but they kept going to, they're not doing anything, as if it mattered. So again, the messaging part of it is that we already know what the messaging is going to be, that we are inherently violent, and anything that happens to us because we are bad people is warranted. Does that make sense to you? I am not saying that that is the truth. I'm saying that when you're looking at these things, when was Breonna Taylor killed? You understand what I'm saying? That we're talking about these things like these things don't happen every day. When was the Tatiana Jefferson killed? When did that happen? So why are we playing the game that because of George Floyd that things were going to stop? It's not going to stop. Now, what I will tell you is this. We have to look at it that there are Caucasian people that are killed by the cops as well.
Mm-hmm.
And these things are intersectional. It goes into poverty. You understand what I'm saying? Like, we have to look at these things that we understand that, and I'm not switching what's going on. I'm just saying, when you're looking at certain things, statistically, there are more white people killed by the cops than black people. Per capita, there are more black people because of straight numbers. But what I'm saying is, what is going on to the fact that cops feel that they can murder people with impunity and nothing is going to happen to them? Does that make sense? That there is a culture of it. And so when we look at the culture of these things, we have to understand that policing historically came from slave catchers. You understand what I'm saying? So when you have a system that was built off of catching slaves and bringing them property back, you can't fix that. It's like a rotten, there's like a tree that's rotten. There's never going to be any fruit of good that's going to come from it. And so what I was going to say to you as we were talking, I just wanted to let you know how many of these people, you had George Floyd, Rashad Brooks, Walter Wallace Jr., Jonathan Price. Jonathan Price was pro-police. Do you understand what I'm saying? And he was shot. He was shot breaking up a fight and shot by the cops. So again, we need to look at it. It's not the individual person. Deshaun Kinsey, he was shot riding a bike. So when we think about these things, we have to look at what Casey Goodman, Andre Hill, all of these people were killed after George Floyd. So what is that saying?
And I think it, like I said, it goes back to what I originally was saying about how people really felt like, George, and I blame it on black. I hate to say it this way, but I blame it on the culture that we're currently in relation to black people. We're not. I'll say it like this. I'm trying to get the right words for it. I feel like a lot of times in more modern history, when it comes down to black people in our movements, black people in this era of black history, we aren't as consistent as they used to be. And I feel like a lot of that is because of social media, and a lot of the different things, how life is just moving so quickly. And I feel like when George Floyd happened, um, we took a lot of people, once they started seeing these companies come out, and these companies were saying, oh well, we're going to give this amount of money and different things, like, and it's similar to when Obama was elected. There were so many promises made and all of these things, but once he got in office, we weren't, as a community, consistent in holding him accountable to make sure we were going to get the things that he said were going to happen. And so when you go in, when I'm referencing now, when it comes down to George Floyd and all the things that happened after that, I feel like we weren't consistent in holding a lot of these companies accountable, or holding a lot of these media entities accountable. A lot of the politicians who said they were going to do certain things, we kind of took it as, okay, they said they were going to do it, so let's wait and see if they're going to do it. And that's just like when I talked about the George Floyd Policing Act. That was one of the major things that political people said that they were going to do. And here we are, 2023, it's not happening. And I feel like it's because I'm trying not to phrase it this way, but I do feel like Black people kind of, we kind of swayed back on it. We didn't really continue fighting the way we should have, to make sure we got those particular things over the line. We kind of, just like I said, we kind of took the word for it that, oh, they're going to do it. They said they were going to do it. And then soon as Democrats, or however you want to be about the politics or whatever, soon as Democrats got control, all of a sudden now they talking about the filibuster and all of this stuff. But that's not what they were saying before they got control. They were telling us, oh, we're going to do all these things. Then they got control, and now it's walking it back to, oh, well, this, that, and the third. And as a community, we didn't band together like we should have to hold them accountable. And so what are your thoughts on, like, Black people and how our Black, I'm really don't like to say Black people, but our Black community, and how we didn't, how do you feel about the Black community and how we organized together after all of the things that happened with George Floyd? Do you feel like Black people kind of let ourselves down in that moment and did not take advantage of the moment like we should have? Do you feel that way?
So can I tell you this? This is what I'm going to tell you. It's the same thing I tell people when they say the situation with Ron DeSantis, right? Only a fool would allow their children to be educated by their enemy. You're asking a system that was built specifically to oppress you to then assist you. That doesn't make sense, because it's not going to happen. And people need to come to that awareness. It's not going to happen. The second thing about it is that George Floyd Policing Act was not going to happen. You know why? Because what happened to the Emmett Till anti-lynching? How long was that up for grabs?
For years.
How many votes? They voted against an anti-lynching bill. Think about it. So probably in 100 more years, maybe 50 years, then the George Floyd Policing Act will happen. So the thing about it is, I don't laugh, but I'm kind of like, if we're going to be anything in 2023, let's be freaking for real. Okay? Jack Johnson was convicted of the Mann Act. And if anybody knows who Jack Johnson is, if you know, you know. And President Trump pardoned him. How many years was that? You understand what I'm saying? George Stinney was a 14-year-old that was executed by the government and was exonerated when? We're talking about Tulsa. We had one woman that was still alive from what happened with the Tulsa massacre. And they still was not willing to admit that. So are we being for real about what's going to happen? And let's be clear about certain things. The reason why we had certain outbreaks was because whether you was a doctor, a lawyer, or a teacher during segregation, you were going to live in that black neighborhood. It was going to happen. If you was a star...
Get the fuck out of here! Get the fuck out the fucking car! Damn, I didn't do anything!
I mean, what started him? You weren't using the pool. You had to go through the back way. It wasn't going to happen. The issue is now that everybody is not regulated to do those things. Does that make sense to you? That during that time, everybody was in it. There was no hotels you was going to use. There was no bathrooms you was going to use. Everybody had to use, quote unquote, the colored section. That's not happening right now. And let's be clear that prior to George Floyd, Debbie Loggins was murdered, positional asphyxiation in 2005, and her son was murdered in 2019 by the same police officer, same police department. His name was Robert Loggins, and nothing happened. So what are we talking about here? Actually, we have to make sure that we're being honest with ourselves. In 2020, there were 21 lynchings that went as suicides. What has changed? The only thing that changed is that certain people within our demographic are allowed to do certain things. That's it.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a lot. And tonight, I did this. I usually do my podcast, and I like to kind of do it while I'm talking to myself and different things like that. But like I said, I did want tonight to bring those videos to people and let people see them who wanted to see them, and kind of have a debriefing and a conversation surrounding the footage that we saw, and to kind of talk about you missed that part because I kind of reached out to you last minute. I just thought about you. I was like, Miss Anna's a good person I could have come on tonight. And I have experience living in Memphis. When I lived in Memphis, it's a great city. And so for people who are listening to my podcast or watching this stream, who are thinking, oh, Memphis must be a terrible place to live and all of that, just because of the things that I have kind of mentioned throughout this video. When I lived in Memphis, Memphis was a great place to live. A lot of things, just like most majority Black cities, Memphis is experiencing. Right now, there's a lot of gentrification happening. There is an uptick in crime. There is a lot of different things happening when it comes down to the policing. You do have things when it comes down to the water quality and different things like that when it comes down to their electricity grids and different things like that. Just different things that would impact your daily life if you were to live in Memphis. But it is a great place to live. And one of the things that I enjoyed when I lived in Memphis was the fact that I was able to meet people who were on the ground. Like one of the people that I met, and I love to speak with her. Me and her still have a great relationship. Is Miss Karen McGee. And she kind of took me in when I moved to Memphis. When I moved to Memphis, I wanted to be active in the community because I've always been someone who wanted to be active and different things like that. And she kind of took me in and kind of introduced me to a lot of the movers and shakers who were on the ground. And it's an interesting dynamic when you're in Memphis. A lot of people don't know about a lot of the different things that are happening on the ground, because when you look at things from a social media perspective, you'll assume, well, people aren't really doing anything. But in Memphis, the dynamic is unique because I'll say, from my understanding, in 2016, 2017, when Darius Stewart was murdered, they started a Black Lives Matter chapter. A lot of different things happened with that, and essentially things kind of broke down, and it ended up being two separate groups of Black Lives Matter. So now when people see Memphis, if you look up Black Lives Matter, you'll find two separate Black Lives Matter organizations in Memphis. And a lot of the people involved in both of those organizations kind of have a lot of friction sometimes. And so when you look at a lot of the work that's going on the ground, you'll see a lot of the different, I don't want to say arguments, but you'll see a lot of division on the ground. And so people look at that, and sometimes people look at that and assume that there's not work being done and different things like that. But there is a lot of work being done. And I did show earlier some of the demands that people were trying to, and I'll see if I can pull those back up. Some of the demands that people were trying to get going. Things like let me see if I can pull it back up again. I'm pulling it back up. Okay, here it is. All right, here it is. I'm gonna see if I can save this image so I can have it as a bigger image for everybody to see.
Can I say something while you're pulling that up?
Mm-hmm.
This is a quote from Martin Luther King. For years now, I've heard the word wait. For years now, I've heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see with one of our distinguished jurors that justice too long delayed is justice denied. So what I'm trying to tell you, and also Malcolm X said, you can't separate peace from freedom, because no one can be at peace unless he has his freedom. Okay? So when we're talking about these things, these are not new things. There's nothing new under the sun. You're always going to have your Malcolm X's and your Martin Luther Kings. You're always going to have your Booker T. Washingtons and your W.E. Du Bois and your Frederick Douglasses. You're always going to have your John Browns and your Harriet Tubmans. You're always going to have your Marcus Garveys. You're always going to have your Paul Robeson versus Jackie Robinson. There's never going to be a consensus when it comes to liberation. You're always going to have your Al Sharptons versus your Jesse Jacksons. So if we go into this thing with liberations, you're always going to have your Huey P. Newtons and your Elijah Muhammad's and your Louis Farrakhan's. Because everything people think, there's always different roads to get there. As long as we're trying to go to the same place, there's always going to be a yin and a yang. It's even like that in the Bible. John the Baptist And John the prophet had different thoughts than Jesus Christ. Let's be clear about that. A way of getting to where they both wanted to go. So when we think about these things, we put this toxic amnesia that all of these people were on the same consensus, and it never happened. Like I said before, there was a lot of Black people that said Martin Luther King caused trouble and caused his own death. That's just documented about that situation. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X did not agree, but also Malcolm X didn't agree with Elijah Muhammad didn't agree with Malcolm X. So once we get into a certain thought process of there's different ways, but we have to be united in we want to get there. And until that happens, it's never going to work. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like the fact that we have this separation with the Black community. It has to be that we are unified in our philosophy of things. John Henry Clark had a different thought process than Francis Cress Welsing. And it's always going to be that. And we should be able to have a buffet of ideas. Does that make sense? Because it seems like with Black people, it has to be a Highlander effect. There can only be one. No, there doesn't have to only be one. And I'm reading from the comments about people respecting the family of this gentleman and reflecting on, I remember when George Floyd died, his girlfriend or fiance or whoever she was, that George Floyd wouldn't want this. We don't know what George Floyd would have wanted because he's dead. Point blank and simple. And nonviolent resistance was a strategy of Martin Luther King. He even said it. After a little while, after that situation in Selma, he said, "My dream has become a nightmare." That's on tape of him saying that. So we got to be clear and be honest about what is going on. Why are we now this is what I'm saying. I'm talking about the words, the messaging. Why are we always saying this was a peaceful, this person didn't do anything wrong? Because on the other side, he should have just complied. If he would have just complied, nothing would have happened to him. We know that's not true. Because even when you comply, there's a possibility of you being murdered. Even if you're innocent, there's a possibility of you being murdered. Botham Jean was in his own home when he was murdered. And because he didn't listen to the commands of somebody that was basically breaking into his home, okay, he deserved to be shot. Breonna Taylor's situation. You are in your bed sleeping and somebody, it seems like they're trying to break into your home. But you're wrong because you tried to defend yourself. A Tatiana Jefferson, that was a welfare check. And instead of the cops going to the door, instead of just announcing themselves, one of the cops creeped around and all she seen was people creeping around. But because in Texas, she had a gun in her hand, it was okay to kill her. So let's be real about what we're talking about.
Yeah, and that's the main reason why I kind of did that little spiel before I pulled up this graphic. Is because, like I said, a lot of people who are into more activist work and community work like we are, they'll look into Memphis and they'll see, oh well, it's just so disorganized and different things like that. So I wanted to kind of bring that, just make that point, because like I said, I do know a lot of the people that are underground, and this is something that they have put out tonight, in relation to some of the things that they want to see change, and so one of the things is, and I talked about this earlier, was ending the use of unmarked cars and plainclothes officers. And that's something that I feel really strongly about, because there's no reason why, if we're being honest, there are people out here who believe in defunding the police and getting rid of police altogether. But we know that is more than likely, in all likelihood, never going to happen anytime soon in the current state of America. We know that most likely that's not something that is probably going to happen.
The question is why?
Exactly.
And I can give you the answer. Because the police job is to protect property.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. There's nothing there constitutionally. The cops do not have a legal obligation to protect you. So if the police officers do not have a legal obligation to protect you, what are they there for? The second thing about defunding the cops, again, a lot of people go to where it's wrong messaging. In that preview, defunding the cops doesn't mean that there's not going to be any public safety or policing. What that's saying is that there are police departments that have this bloated budget, and when they want to take funds away, they take it away from the schools. And we also know being undereducated leads straight to criminality. You're going to build a prison. You're going to spend millions and millions of dollars on a prison that you've taken money from the schools, which, if you're undereducated, you're more than likely to commit a crime. So if we're going to sit here and pretend like that's not a concentrated effort, again, it goes into toxic amnesia, that you want to pretend that these things are not happening. And what's the agenda of it? Once Black people were emancipated, there came the Black codes. And you, as a newly freed enslaved person, it was illegal for you not to have a job. So now I can convict you for not having a job. This is where the vagrancy laws came from. Now I can convict you for not having a home as a new emancipated person. So now I can convict you, put you straight back on the plantation that you just worked for. And we also know convict leasing still goes on. But then, to end my point, now you have children that are born within these penal systems that now belong to the state for their entire life. So what are we really talking about?
And I agree with all of that. And the reason why I personally would like to see something happen in regards to these issues of unmarked cars and plainclothes officers, like we know, like I said, going into this, we know that we're more than likely in any current future we're most likely not going to get rid of policing altogether. So if we're going to be policing, there's no reason why somebody should be pulling you over in a Honda. There's no reason why somebody should be pulling you over in some type of Dodge Charger with no markings that say police to let you know exactly who they are. Because there are places where there are people out here pretending to be In Memphis, in particularly, they recently had a situation where there was a man going around pretending to be a police officer and was robbing people. And so you have these type of situations in different places where these things are happening. And so the fact that there would be like these officers, according to what's being reported, they were a part of a task force called the Scorpion Unit. And I'm not sure what exactly they were supposed to be doing within that task force, but you know, the task force are supposed to be going out and doing investigations and different things like that on certain different things like robberies or certain things like that. And so the fact that they would even be a unit that's supposed to be investigating a specific thing, but yet you're out here conducting a traffic stop, air quotes. You're conducting a traffic stop. There's no reason why they should have even been conducting a traffic stop in an unmarked vehicle. He didn't. Now, I wasn't there and all of that stuff. So obviously I'm just going based off of the videos and things. But if I'm in my car and I'm driving and I see this unmarked vehicle pull up behind me and the lights flashing and then all of a sudden people telling me to get out of my car, obviously I'm going to be a little weary wondering what the hell going on, because like, why the hell are you trying to tell me to get out of my vehicle and I ain't did nothing, or I perceive myself to not have done anything. And so that's one of the major things that I see from the different demands and things that I see that the community is demanding, that I definitely think is likely and that can get changed. And I think that's, like I said, I just feel like that's something that can get changed, and most likely if they continue the pressure that they have going on, that's one of the things that I definitely feel like can, and it probably will get changed, because I know that there are people on different sides of the spectrum who can agree, based on any people who may say he didn't comply and all that other stuff. I'm pretty sure everyone can agree that there's no reason why officers should be out here pulling people over in unmarked vehicles.
Facts. And is not complying with somebody a death penalty? Now, let me bring this to you. In 2022, Eric Canto Jr., 17 years old, was shot by the police as he was eating his McDonald's. Now, this officer said that he supposedly seen Eric Jr., he evaded him. He was on another call and seen the car and just opened. And the kid is sitting there. If you look at the video, he's sitting there with a McDonald's cheeseburger in his hand. We know about carjackings. And like you said, people talking about with Breonna Taylor and Tatiana Jefferson. I don't know who you are. You're opening my car door. You're doing these things. I don't know who you are. Mm-hmm. So to sit here and think that in the days of these carjackings that you can come up in an unmarked car, you can just open somebody's car door. Here in Virginia, we had not even an undercover, an off-duty Pentagon police officer, not even in his own district, see two black men getting into their cars. He shot into the car because supposedly he thought they were robbing the cars. He killed both of them. Like, what are we talking about, really? Are we talking about defunding murderers and abuse for more of a public safety? And let's not even talk about the mental health issues that people have, and they're murdered. Plainly murdered. Because policing here, they're not called to adapt to certain things. They're not even trained for that. And like I said, the shooting of Eric Jr. happened in 2022 of October. We're just into January, and this happened. So what are we really talking about right now? Who are they protecting? Because if we see from serial mass shootings, cops will run away, or with the Uvalde case, won't even go in, but will say, "Oh, if my kids were in that school, I would have went in there." So what are we talking about right now? We can say we talking about training and all kinds of stuff. I can tell you, when I was in the military, these things that are happening, you can shoot into a sand barrel and you would get accountability for doing that into sand for an illegal discharge. But here in this country, you can kill a person, whatever creed, color they are, and it's fine because the police unions will protect you.
Yeah, and I, I really don't have many more words, because like I said, that's something that I personally wanted to see for the longest. Me personally, one of the biggest things I want to see is that police should be out of doing traffic stops altogether. And there are cities where police don't, where police officers aren't the major people who are out giving tickets for traffic violations. When you look at places like Philadelphia, you have people who walk the city, literally who walk the city, who issue citations for parking violations, who issue citations for things like if they pass by your car and you got a bust tail light, they not finna have the police pull you over for that. They just gonna give you a citation, send it in the mail. And technology and things like that have advanced to the point where things like that are good things that can happen. But you have some cities that are so hell bent on harassing Black people, harassing people of color and minorities, that they don't want to utilize those things. They would rather continue having police be able to go out and just pull people over for whatever they need to pull them over for.
You know why?
I want to say you got a air freshener in your mirror, I'm gonna pull you over.
You know why? Money. You have to remember that a lot of these places, their revenue is traffic tickets. They are incentivized when they pull over people with DUIs. And that's from the federal government. It's because of money. Civil forfeiture. I don't remember who the rapper was that they stopped, but it was I forget what the rapper, his name was, but they stole money from him because they get perks from these things. They get to keep the money, they get to keep the cars. And a lot of these places, just like in Ferguson, there's a financial incentive for you to stop these people, give them tickets for whatever you decide that was gonna happen. So what we got to understand is that, yes, the easy target is a minority, but why are they doing that? Because of money.
And that's definitely something that I see, and that also goes into things like the bail system and different things like that. Before I end, before you came on, I said I told the audience that is listening that I was going to share the charges that were given to the officers. And so I'm going to try to pull that up because I did want to make sure I talked about that before I ended the show. Because the charges that they have are serious enough. They're serious enough for my standards. Normally, when these cases happen, a lot of the times they try to give them the lesser charges and things like that. And a lot of the conversation hasn't, in this particular instance, it hasn't really been about, the charges necessarily. A lot of the conversation has been about the fact that they were given bond, and pretty much they were given bond yesterday, and they are already out of jail. All 5 of them have already posted bond. The charges included second-degree murder, aggravated assault, aggravated kidnapping. And when they're talking about the aggravated kidnapping, that is because, like I talked about earlier with the videos, they are saying that there was no legitimate reason for them to even pull him over. And so, since there was no legitimate reason for them to pull him over, the fact that they were even attempting to detain him is a form of kidnapping, because there was no legitimate reason to pull him over. And then you have the 2 counts of official misconduct and a count of official oppression. And that's because they're police officers and they're public officials. And a lot of people don't even know that when it comes down to police officers, the fact that police officers are public officials and they are supposed to be held accountable to the people. And so the reason why we're able to get body cam footage and things like that is because these are things that are public record, because those officers are public officials. And so those were pretty much the charges. All of the charges could give them anywhere between 15 to 60 years in prison. And so we're going to be following this on my podcast. I'm definitely going to be following it as it goes into trial and different things like that. And more than likely, this is going to be one of the cases that'll come pretty fast. We may not get a trial at some point this year, but when you look at the criminal justice system, this more than likely won't be one of those type of cases that'll take 2 or 3 years to get to an actual trial. We'll more than likely have an actual trial happen at some point at the beginning of next year or in the middle of next year, because they're going to try to move quickly with this one. And so I'm definitely going to be following it. And as we know, with a lot of the other cases that have happened when it comes down to the murders of Black people, we're going to be looking into if they're found guilty, because there's always an if, because there are always some people out there that are going to be like, well, he didn't comply, or well this, or well that. And, so there are going to be some people out there that'll be like that. And so we'll definitely be looking into the fact that there's a possibility that they may or they may not be found guilty. And so we'll be looking into that, and also looking into things like when they are found guilty, or if they are found guilty, the amount of time that they'll be given, and also the fact that they are also under federal investigation. Mm-hmm. And so what'll come out of the federal investigations, whether or not they'll be charged with civil rights violations and things like that. And whether it'll be like the Ahmaud Arbery situation. A lot of the conversation around Ahmaud Arbery was the fact that when they did come out and the people involved were convicted of what they were convicted of, the civil rights violations. A lot of the conversation was about whether or not they wanted to be placed in federal prison or state prison, because federal prisons are more so relaxed than, the state prisons are. And so a lot of the conversation was around that. And so those are things that I'll be looking into, and I'm sure Miss Anna will probably be looking at as this more of this developed and going on down the line as this case is talked about more.
Can I just say 2 points?
Mm-hmm.
Is that nothing happens in a vacuum. Okay. We have police departments that are militarized. It's called the 1033 program, where military equipment from Desert Storm, Iraq, Afghanistan, they're able to transfer those things down. They have $1.7 billion of military equipment that was transferred down to local police departments through the 1033 program. Why does a cop or a police department need an MRAP? Why? For what? Who are you? Why does a police department need a grenade launcher? And if you look up the 1033 program, you can look up for state and counties what the equipment that they have. I just looked it up. There's a police department with a grenade launcher. Why? Then we got to look at that they make millions. In 2014, a report by Washington Post found law enforcement regularly sees millions of dollars in assets. So my question is, what are we really talking about? Does that make sense? That you're literally stealing from your citizens that you're supposed to protect. Now, and then the last thing I'm gonna say is, in most particular cases, when compensation is given, the police union doesn't pay it, the police officer doesn't pay it, the citizens of that, their tax dollars are paying for the misconduct of that particular police officer. So citizens that had nothing to do with what happened are paying, and that cop more than likely is going to still get their pension.
Correct. And I talked about that earlier when it came down to the Darius Stewart case out of Memphis. The officer involved in that was never charged. He's never been sentenced or anything in regards to that case. And the city of Memphis is still paying his pension. They're still paying for him to basically sit at home after what happened with Darius Stewart and all of the things that happened subsequently after that, when it came down to the protest and different things that changed the city during that time. And so, like I said, that all of these things are things that I'll be watching. I'm pretty sure you'll be watching. And we've been on about 2 hours. This is going to be the longest podcast episode that I have on my show. And it's been a great conversation with Miss Anna. And I'll allow you to give any final thoughts that you may have on this before I wrap things up.
All I want to say is thank you very much for asking me. And all I would say to everybody is look at what your use of force for your police departments are. Become First Amendment auditors. And I don't want to use the word woke anymore because we know that it's not giving anymore. But understand what's going on right now. And understand why certain things are happening and why they're happening to certain people. Thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate it.
Definitely. And thank you for coming on tonight. Like I said, I was just on and kind of giving my spiel, and I was thinking in the back of my head, like, who could I get on to come at the last minute to come on and kind of talk about what was going on with the Tyre case. And I was like, Miss Anna's going to be the perfect person to come on and give her thoughts on it. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. Just to kind of shout some of the people out in the comments before I get off. Gossman Ricky Smiley, he's been here with us for about a good minute. At the beginning, we had Miss Jean, and then we also had Miss Dean, who were in attendance with us in the audience, giving their thoughts and things in the comment section. So thank everybody for tuning in and being a part of this conversation. Continue to follow my podcast. Continue following me on social media for updates. Like I said, I know a lot of the people that are on the ground in Memphis, so I'll definitely be following this case and sharing the things that they put out as far as action items and demands and different things like that, and ways that you could get involved to help get further justice in this case for Tyre Nichols. So that's all I have for tonight. Before I end this show, I definitely want to make sure I also one last time give my condolences and offer my prayers to anyone who has had any connection to Tyre Nichols, the community in Memphis, and the people, his family. Just sharing my thoughts and offer up my prayers for the family and people surrounded and close to Tyre. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you guys again for tuning in, and we're out.